After graduating from college, I moved into a shared apartment with my rich Arab boyfriend to endure hardships and start a business. I was building the business while he endured the struggles alongside me. After a long day of work, I'd return to our modest home. He always had fragrant, home-cooked meals waiting for me. Life was tough, but we both felt happy. Until one day, I saw live comments. Heavens, the male lead is still suffering through startup struggles with his ex-girlfriend. When will the female lead even appear? The male lead is too naive, abandoning the golden future his parents paved for him to eat instant noodles in a rental with his ex. Don't worry, once his ex-wife's business fails and she starts drinking heavily, becoming violent at home, and even cheating, he'll come crawling back to take over the family business. But honestly, summer, rental apartment, bare skin, working hard together. They have such intense sexual tension. I saw these comments just after Glenn Gu and I had finished our intimate session, lying on my side, catching my breath, and slowly recovering from the afterglow of pleasure. My skin was soaked with sticky sweat from the stifling heat. Glenn Gu held me in his arms, his head resting against the back of my neck. I blinked, and the rows of live comments were still there. I pinched myself, and the pain made me realize this was real. I got up and whispered, "I'm going to take another shower. It's too hot." Hearing this, Glenn got up to prepare my change of clothes, then took my hand and led me to the shared bathroom. He stood guard at the door like a sentinel, watching over me. Glenn and I lived in a shared apartment with a mixed crowd. Aside from a bed and a wardrobe, the room had nothing, and even the bathroom was communal. I lost my father at 5, my mother at 10, and at 17, my grandmother, the last family I had, passed away too. I was the only one left on the household register, and I'd worked odd jobs to cover my tuition since childhood. So living in such conditions after graduation didn't surprise me at all. What had surprised me was having someone by my side after graduation. Glenn and I had known each other since high school. He was the well-known rich heir at our school. He had a private car for transportation, 3 meals a day delivered by the butler from home, and was dressed head to toe in designer brands, exuding an air of refined elegance from every inch. Kind, gentle, and generous. He got along well with everyone. Compared to me, he seemed born to enjoy a life of ease. I considered us worlds apart, rarely exchanging words even though we were in the same class. The only times we interacted were when he bought a few things from me during my school business ventures, items he had no real use for. Most of my time outside class was dedicated to work, and being late or leaving early was common for me. I struggled through my studies with sheer determination, lacking natural academic talent and sacrificing most of my time to support myself. So my grades were nothing impressive, but I managed to get into college. Then began a new cycle of part-time jobs. Glenn Gu and I attended different universities, but they were in the same city. Our first real conversation likely happened when I was working at an off-campus bubble tea shop, shaking drinks, and he came in to buy one. After that, he became a regular customer there. After that, he took my worn-out secondhand phone and entered his contact information. Our interactions became frequent, and after one confession, where he blushed deeply, I nodded in agreement. Glenn Gu was very clingy with me, perhaps because he had been overly pampered since childhood. He carried a gentle naivety about him. When we were together, he would always dream up impractical fantasies, like getting married right after graduation. From the moment we got together, I knew we could never reach that point. The gap between us was too vast. I agreed to be with him not because I liked him, but because in my heavy, oppressive life, until then, I had never experienced such a way of living. To fill my lonely existence with a stranger I needed to understand. According to Glenn Gu's original life path, after graduation, he should have joined his family's company. Even if he knew nothing, he could still follow the smooth path his parents had paved for him and live a comfortable life forever. Not to mention, he was actually quite intelligent, but recklessly, he insisted on introducing me to his parents and wanted to marry me. He had the most severe argument with his parents in over 20 years. Even his usually gentle parents resorted to harsh words and physical force, desperate to crush his resolve. Watching their actions, I couldn't help but think how naively terrifying their whole family was. Even if Glenn Gu didn't particularly like me before, this ordeal might spark a desire in him to defy them. They had raised Glenn Gu too innocently, instilling in him an unwavering belief in love above all in this murky world. Ignoring his family's objections, he resolutely moved into a remote shared apartment with me to endure hardships together. It hasn't been long since it started, but it's been blocked 4 times already. Are the male lead and his ex-girlfriend meeting too frequently? Isn't this just being so broke that there's no entertainment left except for? If they keep like this, they won't even have money for condoms soon. I came for the male and female leads, but ended up crushing on the male lead and his ex. Every time they share a scene, my face flushes and heart races wildly. Help, does the novel mention the male lead and his ex being this clingy? When is our female lead going to show up? I washed off the sticky sweat, clinging to my body. My gaze lingered on the eerie live comments, extracting and piecing together information from them. According to them, this world is a romance novel, but I'm not the female lead. I'm just the gold-digging, vain, incompetent, and self-indulgent female supporting character. The story hasn't even begun yet. It's likely to start in about 2 or 3 years, when Glenn Gu, heartbroken by my failed entrepreneurial venture, breaks up with me, returns home to inherit the family business, and later enters a business marriage with the returning female lead. A marriage of convenience that turns into love. I serve as the tool character who makes him close off his heart until he meets the female lead and opens up again. And later, I contribute to advancing their relationship, ending up beautifully written off by going to prison in the finale. I have no interest in how Glenn Gu and the female lead meet and fall in love in the future mentioned by the live comments, nor in who the male supporting characters or villains are. I am interested in the future directions they mentioned for Glenn Gu and the female lead. For now, I lack the capital to start a business, both in terms of money and connections, so my ideas for entrepreneurship remain only as concepts in my mind. The future mentioned in the live comments could provide me with more inspiration. I dried my drenched body and opened the door. Standing at the entrance of the public bathroom were 2 tall men. One was Glenn Gu, and the other was the neighbor living next door. He was shirtless, wearing only shorts, with exaggerated muscle definition, sun-kissed skin, and his towering frame giving off an intimidating presence. Wyatt, he, holding a bucket, approached me immediately upon seeing me come out. He brushed past my shoulder as if impatient from the heat, appearing quite hurried. Glenn Gu pulled me aside, frowning, and used a towel to wipe the spot where Wyatt had touched me. He had a cleanliness obsession, always keeping our small room spotlessly tidy. Back when he was a young master, he carried tissues and handkerchiefs everywhere, disinfecting anything he received right away. But after being with me, this habit gradually faded, as refusing to change would mean the summer sweat could drive him to live in the bathroom. Belatedly, I realized there was no sound of the door closing behind me. I instinctively turned to see what it was, and met a pair of eyes peering through the crack of the door that hadn't fully closed. It felt like being stared down by a beast lurking in the bushes. I initially thought it was just a minor incident, but the live comments reacted surprisingly intensely. Holy crap, is that the loyal male supporting character? The world in this novel is so small. Do the main and supporting characters all live in the same place before the story even starts? By the time the story begins, the male lead has already returned home to inherit the family fortune, and the male supporting character has risen from rags to riches. Who knew the precursor to this CEO romance was actually a story set in a rental apartment? When the male supporting character brushed past the female supporting character just now. The contrast in their skin tones and height was huge. With a body and face like that, how could the female supporting character not even glance at him? What a waste of a fine specimen. That brief sandwich scene a moment ago got me feeling a little hot and bothered. I never expected that a mere stranger passing by would have a role to play in the story. According to them, Wyatt, he is the male supporting character who, during his entrepreneurial struggles, was helped by the female lead, and fell deeply in love with her, even after she got married. Based on the fragments from the live comments, I deduced that Wyatt, he would start his business within these 2 years. Though not close to him, I vaguely recall he drove heavy trucks for long-distance hauls. Since my father had an accident while driving a big rig, I've always had a strong impression of people in that line of work. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I lower my head and watched as Glenn held my foot, gently applying a bandage and massaging my sore sole. At work, I had to run around in high heels, which I wasn't used to, often causing my heels to bleed from the friction. If it weren't for the job requirements, I'd probably stick to wearing flats all the time. Glenn Gu's massage skills evolved from clumsy to increasingly adept. Though I've never been to a massage parlor, I felt his technique was better controlled than theirs. He had no job because he rebelliously eloped with me. His family not only froze his cards, but also blacklisted him in the industry, making it impossible for him to build a career, no matter how impressive his resume was. Initially, Glenn took up work as a server, trading his physical labor for some income, but I noticed that after he started working, my quality of life declined significantly. Although the ingredients were humble, there were hearty breakfasts, the unwavering presence waiting for me at the company gate after work regardless of weather, dinners ready upon arriving home, and a cozy, organized little home. Jobs that trade physical labor for pay often involve long hours. Sometimes, I'd return from work and still not see him home. That evening, I calculated my salary. It wasn't much, but after setting aside savings for our startup fund, the remaining money could cover our living expenses and rent for both of us. So I suggested he quit his job and let me support him instead. I said, "Your job takes up too much of your time. We already have little time together each day, and now it's even less. I want to eat the meals you cook every day, and I want our little home to always be warm and cozy, but that requires someone to sacrifice their time to maintain it. Glenn, if I could, I'd wish to be the one making that sacrifice, but my supervisor said if I work another month, I'll get a raise, and then we can move away from here. We're both striving for our future, just in different ways." Glenn was so moved by my words that his eyes welled up with tears, and he kissed my lips with utmost devotion. The very next day, he quit his job and prepared a relatively lavish dinner for me. I didn't see anything wrong with that. No one understood better than I that enduring long-term, meaningless physical labor only wears down one's will and breeds constant self-doubt, especially for someone like him, a young master who had never known hardship. He might last a month, but what about 2, 3, or 4 months? He wouldn't be able to hold on. Sooner or later, he'd come to his senses and realize that a life of comfort far outweighed suffering for love. I didn't know how long it would take for him to give up, but I knew he couldn't leave before I escaped this chaotic place. He had to stay with me, be my support, my shield against the lewd stares of vulgar people. Only after I succeeded could he freely choose his path, whether to remain as my kept man or spread his wings and fly far away. On our day off, Glenn went out to buy groceries while I lay on the cool mat, pressing close to the fan. This little room felt like a furnace, roasting me on the chopping board. Someone knocked quietly on the door. I got up and put on Glenn shirt. His top was loose enough to cover my hips, making it convenient for a brief encounter. The weather was so hot, I wished I could peel off my own skin. When staying home, I wouldn't even bother wearing clothes. After all, it wouldn't be me who felt uncomfortable seeing it. I opened the door to find a man standing outside, tall and imposing like a solid wall, blocking everything out. "What can I do for you?" Wyatt, his presence was so aggressive that I instinctively put my foot behind the door to prevent him from barging in. But he didn't. He just reached out his hand, saying, "You left something in the bathroom." In his rough palm lay a hair tie that Glenn had given me. I reached out to take it, my cool fingers briefly touching his scorching palm before quickly pulling back. "Thank you. I must have accidentally left it there." It seemed there was no reason to linger any longer. Wyatt, he thought for a moment, and just as he was about to turn and leave, I called him back. "Are you heading north recently?" I heard fruits are cheaper in the cities along the way. Could you bring some back for me? I leaned against the doorframe, casually slipping the hair tie around my wrist. I knew my current appearance was far from respectable, wearing my boyfriend's clothes, barefoot for a bit of coolness, boldly answering the door like this, retrieving my things, and then having the nerve to ask for a favor to bring back fruits. When I asked this, Wyatt, he lifted his gaze to meet mine. He used to never dare to look me in the eye, as if doing so would reveal some shameful thoughts of his. But now he dared, as if my question had given him immense courage, or like he'd received some tacit approval. Wyatt, he swallowed, his eyes darting away as he softly agreed. I smiled at him, said thank you, and closed the door. In the slowly closing gap, I saw his gradually warming face, barely noticeable beneath his darker skin. I took off my clothes and lay back on the bed, letting the fan blow over me while waiting for the grocery shopper to return and cook for me. The live comments were scrolling wildly, celebrating something I couldn't fathom. Isn't this supposed to be a clean romance? What have I stumbled into? Are the male lead and male supporting character still involved with the female lead? They've reached a point where just sharing a screen with the female supporting character gets me all fired up. Don't you think it's hot that the female supporting character just met the male supporting character wearing her boyfriend's clothes? Bare, legged and barefoot, leaning against the door, sweat glistening from stepping away from the fan, her heavy breathing making a request. Just them standing face to face had me bleeding from the nose. Inviting him inside would be even better. A kiss would be the cherry on top. Mom, please let her have a taste of the male supporting character before the main plot kicks in. Am I the only one who noticed that hair ties seemed intentionally left behind by the female supporting character? As usual, I skipped over the nonsensical comments and focused on recording future events. The next day, Glenn Gu brought back 3 large bags of fruit from the doorway. Was this delivered to the wrong person? I stared at the 3 bags of fruit, lost in thought. There was everything from watermelons to apples and peaches. As if unsure of my preferences, they bought some of every fruit available at the supermarket. This must have cost quite a bit of money. During my few seconds of silence, Glenn Gu kept his eyes fixed on me the entire time. Although he claimed it was a mistaken delivery, he had already carried the items inside, as if knowing they were meant for me all along. I explained, I asked the neighbor to buy these yesterday. He went north, and I thought the fruit would be cheaper there, but I didn't expect him to buy so much. We should return some to him. Glenn Gu sat down on his own, taking the fruits out of the bags one by one, as if enumerating my faults piece by piece. Did he come by when I went downstairs to buy groceries yesterday? Lying on my back on the bed with my legs crossed, I gave a non-committal He always had the snack, even when not by my side, for accurately guessing when another man would appear. The cleverness he showed in school was now applied to memorizing every person, event, and thing I came into contact with. Back in school, he loved writing things down on paper and had a real flair for words. He still writes constantly, logging the times I go out, the routes I take, the places I pass by, the people I meet, the words I say, and even my sensitive spots. Sometimes I'd lean over his back, watching him meticulously record my likes and dislikes stroke by stroke. That notebook occasionally doubled for calculating our household expenses, how much we earned each month, how much we spent, what was left over, and the extra money went toward buying condoms. I knew he'd follow me in the mornings, silently watching me all the way to work as if conducting a surveillance operation. He thought I didn't know, but the other diary he hid, the one filled with his secret, dark thoughts, it had long since become worn out from my frequent handling. In his diary, he always expressed hatred and resentment toward anyone who came into contact with me. He was so insecure that he probably felt if he lost the aura of being the Gu family heir, he would have nothing left, not even the ability to ensure I had a better life. Glenn Gu had never really thought there was anything wrong with being a house husband. He didn't hold traditional views about men working outside and women managing the home. On the contrary, he preferred being taken care of. It was proof that he was loved. But that didn't stop him from feeling insecure. He was well aware of my excellence and knew that one day I would reach greater heights and face more and bigger temptations. He was even more afraid that one day I would grow tired of this lifestyle and choose to leave him. He feared I had chosen him because of his family background, though he had once been grateful for it. That was in the past. Now that he had been kicked out of the family, he had no bargaining chips left. Even if he was obedient enough, it seemed he might still become someone who could be abandoned at any moment. Glenn's eyes were dark as he slowly took out the fruits from the 3 bags. Each fruit was plump and glossy, as if revealing how thoughtfully the other person had selected them at the market, subtly sending me a hidden message. He gripped the rosy apple, his fingers nearly sinking into its flesh. That shameless, despicable scoundrel, Glenn picked and chose, but couldn't even find a single bad apple among them to use as an excuse to stir up trouble. "Oh, didn't he know you don't like eating apples?" Without thinking, I said, "We've only met a few times. We're not that familiar yet." Although it was just a simple statement, Glenn grew stubbornly fixated on the idea that I was defending him, making excuses for him, implying that we would gradually become closer in the future. His gentle facade gradually crumbled as he expressionlessly took out the apple and said, "Throw that apple back." He used the word throw, loaded with emotion. This was his way of making it clear to me that he was angry. After all, he had been pampered since childhood, though he appeared gentle on the surface. It didn't mean Glenn was without a temper. How could he not be angry when someone was challenging him right to his face? I propped myself up from the bed, snuggled close to him, leaning against his body, and asked, "Are you angry?" Glenn was wearing a tank top and shorts. His body was warm, but no matter how hot he got, he would never take off his shirt and go bare, chested, perhaps because he grew up in a climate where wearing suits year-round was never too hot. He couldn't bring himself to act that way, or maybe deep down he was still a somewhat conservative young man at times. By occasionally conservative, it meant he wasn't conservative in bed. Far from it, like right now, feeling frustrated and aware that I intended to comfort him. He turned his head to look at me and, after just a 0.01 second pause, kissed me, the 3 neatly arranged bags of fruit scattered everywhere. It seemed he wanted to vent his pent-up frustration and desires all at once, verbally asking if this was okay, if that move was acceptable, if we could do it again. But his hands were far less gentle than his words. I braced one hand against the wall, biting my lip to stifle any sounds. The shared apartment had poor soundproofing, and any loud noise would surely be noticed by others the next day. So, even though we were in a legitimate relationship, it always felt like we were sneaking around. Glenn reached out and grabbed another one, and I asked in confusion, "There's more?" He smiled, his eyes clearing up as his gloom vanished. "Last month, I had some leftover money, so I used it to buy these." I ruffled his hair. Unbelievable. What kind of decent person budgets their money just to buy condoms? Glenn carried the extra fruit and knocked on the neighbor's door. Wyatt, he opened the door, his eyes half drooping, looking like he couldn't be bothered to deal with anyone. "What do you want?" He looked somewhat disheveled, and there was a smell of smoke inside the room. Glenn put on a business-like smile and offered the fruit forward. "Nancy said you brought too much, and we don't have much money, so she sent me to return some. How much do I owe you for the rest of the fruit?" Wyatt, he didn't take it, insisting she come herself. Glenn smile faded gradually. "She's busy. No time for something this minor. Her boyfriend can handle it." Wyatt, he didn't respond, just kept repeating, "Let her come herself." Without waiting for Glenn to say anything more, he slammed the door with a scowl. After closing the door, he opened the window to air out the smell in the room. The soundproofing here isn't good, so he could hear everything. Although Glenn claimed he had returned the fruit and paid the money, I knew from the live comments that he had done neither. He had thrown the fruit into the trash. Sure enough, in the latest entry of his diary, I saw his resentment towards Wyatt and even thoughts of moving out. While he was away, I knocked on the neighbor's door, thinking it was only right to pay for all that fruit they had bought. When Wyatt, he opened the door. I said, "Hello, how much for the fruit? I'll pay you." He didn't respond immediately, but instead opened the door wider and invited me in. Such a small matter hardly warranted an invitation inside, but I stepped in anyway. His room, though not large, was the best in the shared apartment and the most expensive. It had air conditioning, a balcony, and a private bathroom. As soon as I entered, the summer heat was shut out, and I felt a coolness I hadn't experienced in a long time. Wyatt, he motioned for me to sit on his bed. The moment I sat down, I was enveloped in the unmistakable scent of another man. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, wearing a simple tank top and shorts. Wyatt, he closed the door and turned around to see the scene. Pausing mid-step, I looked up at him and smiled when our eyes met. The hair tie holding my ponytail was one he had returned to me a few days earlier. Wyatt gave me a random number for the fruit, and though I knew yesterday's bag cost far more, I pretended not to notice and paid without hesitation. By the way, Wyatt, are you driving tomorrow? I had overheard another neighbor in the shared apartment call him that, so I took the liberty of using the same address. "What did you call me?" he asked abruptly, ignoring my question. With a hint of confusion, I repeated, "Wyatt, is it not okay? I heard others call you that." "It's fine." A slight smile curled at his lips as he said with hidden delight, "Do you need me to bring you anything?" He seemed to have slipped into a certain role, completely absorbed in it, completely forgetting the fact that I have a boyfriend. I asked him to get me a few outfits from the clothing market over there. Online shopping was just taking off, aligning with the future I had envisioned from the live comments. The next few years' opportunities lay in e-commerce and the internet. Before my mother passed away, she was a seamstress with excellent taste. Growing up around her, I've always had a keen interest in the fashion industry. Wyatt, he agreed without hesitation, asking, "What size?" He posed the question seriously, but his mind was filled with the memory of me opening the door in Glenn Goo's clothes that day. After chatting with him briefly, I stood up to leave, not wanting to stay too late, as Glenn Goo would be back soon. Just before I left, Wyatt called out to me, "Take that bag of fruit with you." I paused, surprised, and said, "I didn't ask you to buy it." Wyatt replied casually, "Yeah, I bought it myself." I was about to refuse, but the next moment, he cut me off with a single sentence. "If you don't take it, I'll drop it off at your door later." Later? When exactly is later? When Glenn Goo returned, I looked up at him, and he was staring at me unblinkingly, not even flinching when I caught him in the act. Completely different from the person who used to shy away if our eyes merely brushed past each other, as if telling me that the day I opened the door and asked for his help was like inviting a wolf into my home. He would never let go once he sank his teeth in, but he forgot. I was the one who opened the door, and I was the one who spoke up. So the decision of whether to take it back should also be mine. "No, you've helped me enough. I can't accept your things without reason." Wyatt, his eyes instantly darkened, his lips pressed into a thin line, like the calm before a storm. I took a step forward and said, "You wouldn't really leave things at my doorstep, would you? I don't like people who take matters into their own hands." If Wyatt really does that, then next time I'll have to ask someone else for help. Wyatt lowered his gaze, watching me step closer to him, yet every word I spoke pushed him further away. His heart sank little by little. He understood that in this game where the other person was absent, he had lost that good for nothing. My heart leaned unhesitatingly toward the other, even though he had prepared for this outcome before deciding to steal me away. But when I truly issued a warning without any concealment, openly stating my intention to use him, his heart was still stung. Humans are indeed greedy. Initially, he had no such thoughts, merely creating subtle opportunities to get closer to me, where occasional meetings and touches would leave him feverish and lost in fantasies for days. Yet, when the olive branch to climb higher was genuinely extended to him, he began to grow even more avaricious, wanting everything, wanting to get close to me, to invite me into his room, to subtly assert his claim, to occupy the space by my side as his own. His desires only grew stronger. In the brief silence, we both tacitly awaited some answer. Wyatt, he stared into my eyes and agreed with a yes. He still took the way out I offered. I smiled and thanked him. Before leaving, I picked a peach from the bag and held it up to show him. The gloom in his eyes faded, and his expression softened slightly. The live comments were going wild again. Is this something I can even learn? The male supporting character sensed the olive branch extended by the female supporting character and began testing the waters step by step, even trying to use fruit to assert dominance over the official boyfriend, openly trying to steal her away. He wanted to force the female supporting character to accept his intrusion with aggressive tactics, but she clearly wasn't having any of it. She outright rejected him and made it clear she was standing by her boyfriend. This is hilarious. He tried to climb up and kick the official boyfriend out of the picture, only to get shoved back into the dirt by the female supporting character. Male supporting character. I want to be the third wheel openly. Female supporting character. Get lost. If you can't handle it, I'll replace you. Male supporting character. Okay, the female supporting character is really skilled. She's clear about rewards and punishments. When it's time to punish, she doesn't hold back. But after punishing, she gives a little pat, like saying, I may have disciplined you, but I still care about you. I didn't understand at first why both the male lead and male supporting character were so eager, but now I get it. If the female supporting character treated me like that, I'd be even more of a simp than both of them combined. Mom, can you and Dad give me a kiss? When Glenn returned, he rarely wore such a gloomy expression. This definitely wasn't the reaction he should have had upon learning I'd been in Wyatt He's room. If he knew I'd visited Wyatt his expression would have been more guarded, his demeanor perfectly composed, though his words would betray his irritation. I asked him what had happened. While washing vegetables, Glenn said, My cousin wants to come see me. He already knows we're living here. Oh, Glenn cousin, that narcissistic guy who always scowls at me. The first time he saw me with Glenn his face said it all. You're just after my money, aren't you? He doesn't even bother hiding his disapproval of us. I even suspect that half the reason Glenn family opposes our relationship is due to his cousins stirring up trouble behind our backs. After all, Glenn himself admitted that during his arguments with his parents, his cousin was there fanning the flames. With a man like that coming over, I couldn't even imagine how annoying he would be. Glenn looked at me guiltily. You know how he is. He knows the address. Even if I refuse, it's useless. He'll just show up on his own. Why not just shut the door and not let him in? That's what I thought, but Felix Fu had clearly already planned his move. As I was closing the door, he wedged a foot in, yelping in pain when it got caught. In that situation, of course, I couldn't shut the door. He took the chance to rub his leg while squeezing his way inside. Once in the room, he realized the space was so cramped it was hard to find a place to stand. It was already a bit tight with just Glenn and me, and now, with another tall man crammed in, the whole area felt even more confined. His gaze swept around before landing on me, and for no reason, he leaned in slightly, like a feline sniffing the air before approaching someone. I took a small step back and bumped into the cabinet. Glenn warned sharply, Bro. He grabbed my wrist, pulling me away from Felix Fu. Felix Fu looked at him with disdain and sneered, Look how precious you are with her. Do you think your girlfriend is some irresistible enchantress that everyone would fall for? He glanced around again and scoffed. A proper young master like you, choosing to suffer in this dump instead of living in luxury. It's not even as big as my bathroom. How can anyone stand being here? I frowned and retorted, If you can't stand it, get out. Felix stared at me for a moment before slowly enunciating, I refuse to. He wore an expression that said he'd oppose me to the end, just because he couldn't stand me. The live comments erupted into another round of excitement with the appearance of a new character. The villain has arrived. The guy who'll later compete with his cousin for a woman and resort to forced love after failing to win her over. Seems like, whether before or after the plot kicks in, the villain is the only one who never suffers any hardships. He's a CEO now and will remain one in the future, while the male lead at least had to endure living in a rental for a while. My expression shifted momentarily as I read the comment about him trying to steal his cousin's wife. Felix Fu made himself at home as casually as if he owned the place. I'm here on behalf of my poor aunt and uncle to see how they're good. For nothing. Unfilial son who ran off with someone is doing. Aren't you going to turn on the AC in this heat? After just a short while, Felix Fu, dressed in his crisp tailored suit, was already sweating profusely from the heat. He was used to having air conditioning follow him wherever he went, never imagining there were places in this world without it. He wore a brand new custom-made suit, had his hair freshly permed, and even sprayed on cologne. He dressed up so meticulously to meet someone, not to end up sweating like a dog. I sat on the edge of the bed and pointed at the fan, saying apologetically, "Sorry, we can't afford a place with AC on our budget. This is all we have." And the fan wasn't even pointed in his direction. Felix Fu took off his suit jacket and tugged at his collar. "Is this how you treat your guests? Glenn Gu, I think you've been corrupted by this woman. Don't you know to offer me a seat and pour me some tea when I visit?" Glenn Gu glanced at me, and I winked back at him. He smiled good-naturedly, responding to Felix Fu's remark before pulling out a folding square table and a plastic stool from a narrow space. The stool was so low that it seemed almost insulting for someone as tall as Felix to sit on it. Felix's face instantly darkened with displeasure. He glanced around, his gaze finally settling on me, who was clearly trying to suppress a laugh. With a cold sneer, he switched to sarcastic mode. "No offense, cousin, but look how far you've fallen since leaving your parents. Living in a place like this with her. Are you eating and sleeping well? You're working yourself to the bone for less than what you used to get as pocket money, barely able to support yourself, let alone a family. If you just apologized to your parents, they'd take you back. Apologizing would mean breaking up with me. After all, Glenn Gu's parents had made it clear. Marry me and get out of the house." Glenn quietly interjected, "Brother, I don't support the family. Nancy earns the money and takes care of me. I stay at home and haven't worked a day." Felix Fu's expression went blank with confusion for a moment. He even leaned his ear forward, doubting whether he had heard correctly. Who's supporting whom? He instinctively looked at me. I curled my lips into a smile and said, "Didn't you understand? I'm the one supporting the family." Glenn Gu purely gave up being a rich heir to endure hardships with me. For a moment, Felix didn't know what expression to wear. Heartache, speechlessness, or an indescribable jealousy. He looked at his cousin, who was gazing at me with a face full of affection and a smile. He showed no signs of regret, instead sinking deeper into this relationship, appearing well, nourished by love. Felix said, "Oh, is that so? Then you're quite impressive, supporting such a large freeloader who does nothing but live off you." Glenn showed no awareness of being insulted. He didn't find these terms offensive, instead acting as if it were perfectly natural, as though being supported by me was something to be proud of and boast about. In his heart, this was proof that he was loved. Felix Fu was quite the delicate type. I thought he was even more high maintenance than Glenn Gu. From the moment he stepped inside, he complained about everything, even the bed being too firm and the bed sheets too rough. Now that he'd tired himself out complaining, he started saying he was hungry. "All right, I imagine you two haven't had a decent meal in ages. Probably been living on scraps that would give anyone heartburn. My treat today." With that, he called his assistant and gave a long list of instructions. If he were my boss, I would have punched him out long ago. A few minutes later, Glenn and I realized he hadn't just ordered food. There were also custom-made tables and chairs. If installing an AC didn't take time, I suspect he would have had one brought over too. The commotion grew so loud that neighbors started peeking out to see what was happening. I gritted my teeth and asked, "Are you planning to move in permanently?" Felix stared at me again. "Cousin, would you mind if the three of us shared a bed?" He continued without waiting for an answer. "If you don't mind, I could stay over." In the end, the three of us ended up sitting together, enjoying the exotic delicacies he had brought, luxuries that starkly contrasted with the simplicity of this shared apartment. Felix Fu had taken off his suit jacket, but still felt too hot. He loosened his tie, letting it hang slack, and unfastened the top few buttons of his shirt, revealing a generous expanse of skin. Every time he leaned forward, it offered a glimpse of the view beneath. Glenn Gu couldn't hold back any longer and said, "Bro, can you dress properly?" Felix sneered. "You're wearing even less than I am. What can a tank top possibly cover? You've got no right to criticize how I'm dressed." Glenn cut straight to the point. "Is it appropriate for you to dress like that in front of my girlfriend?" Felix retorted, "What are you implying? That I'm deliberately dressed this way to seduce her? Huh, I'm not as foolish as you, giving up a comfortable villa and estate to come suffer here with someone." As the center of the discussion, I stayed silent, focusing on eating and drinking without a word. The only issue was the cramped space, with feet on either side sandwiching me in, occasionally brushing against me, as if testing the waters. Plenty of people throw themselves at me. Why would I need to seduce my brother's girlfriend? The foot on the left hooked around my leg once more. If I hadn't lost all sense of left and right, this couldn't be Glenn Gu's. I glanced at Felix Fu. He was still chattering away at Glenn Gu. He hadn't eaten much, but he sure had a lot to say, whether with his mouth or his feet. He never stopped moving. I stretched out my foot and stepped directly on his shoe, pressing down his restless foot. Felix Fu's words cut off abruptly, as if someone had hit the pause button. Glenn Gu gave him a puzzled look. Finally, the meal concluded in peace. When seeing off this uninvited guest, he had his assistant take Glenn Gu to the trunk to retrieve the items his parents had sent, while he quietly slipped over to my side. "Do you know how much these shoes cost, sister-in-law, that you dare step on them?" As he spoke, he lifted his heel to show the shoe's surface, where a faint shoe print stood out prominently. I said, "Do you need me to pay for it?" "Yes, of course I do." Felix Fu stared at me, leaned down close to my ear, and said, "Break up with my cousin. Whatever he can't give you, I can." After an eerie pause of a second, the live comments started scrolling frantically. "Wait, so he's really just coveting his cousin's wife? All that stirring up trouble for the young couple earlier. Turns out he wants to ruin his cousin's relationship so he can have a shot himself. Huh? This villain is as single-minded as ever, whether before or after the plot kicks in, always fixating on the sister-in-law with his desires." I said something very classic. "He's your cousin." Felix Fu, "I know. But compared to my cousin's happiness, mine is more important, isn't it? You know, supporting him won't lead to the day his parents give their approval. But if you take a broader view and look at the people around him, you'll find someone more suitable for you. Me, at least if I marry you. I don't need my parents' approval, and I can voluntarily contribute assets under my name without their consent either. He can only share your hardships, but I can lift you out of here and take you to greater heights. Being with him is like playing house. Coming with me is stepping into the adult world." I looked at him in surprise and said, "But what can I do? I prefer a man who shares my struggles and needs me to support him." Felix Fu's expression cracked for a moment. I continued, "I like a man who has dinner ready for me when I get home from work, waiting at the table, and wakes up early to make breakfast before I head to the office. I like a man who brings the warmth of home to my life. Someone as busy as Mr. Fu probably couldn't manage that, but Glenn can." Felix Fu's expression shifted, and after a pause, he laughed, saying, "So you like someone who uses his brother's money to buy condoms for himself?" This time, it was my turn for my expression to go blank. Felix Fu looked at me teasingly. "Didn't you know? When he left, I gave him a card. After all, he's still my brother. I couldn't just watch him starve." He didn't buy much else with that card. All the money went into buying condoms. "The reason I came looking for you this time is because I froze his card, and he came to my company demanding money to buy more condoms. Your sexual happiness was provided by me. You know, doesn't that at least earn me a chance to sleep by your side?" I thought my past experiences had given me a strong heart and an exceptionally thick skin, but I still blushed at Felix Fu's words. From anger, I went up and twisted Glenn Gu's ear, gritting my teeth as I said, Let's go home." Glengu was so confused, he lost all control of his expression, repeatedly asking me in a soft voice what had happened. I made some alterations to the clothes he brought back. When I wore the finished product, I made appropriate adjustments based on the live comments, making it more aligned with what they called the future hit trend. I wouldn't stop until they all gasped in unison. When I went to work on Monday, I heard colleagues talking about the company being acquired and our supervisor being replaced. During the afternoon shift, someone called me to the supervisor's office. As soon as I opened the door, I saw a familiar face. Felix Fu was sitting pretentiously in the office chair, feigning surprise as he said, "What a coincidence, meeting you here. We must be fated." The assistant who had called me up and hadn't left yet. I replied, "Not a coincidence, Mr. Fu. You're the one who had me summoned here." Felix Fu was the thickest-skinned person I'd ever met, second only to myself. He slowly walked over to me. "Nancy Jiang, I've heard many people mention you since I came to this company. They all say you're remarkable, a rare talent." His gaze settled on me, and he suddenly reached out to tug at the hem of my clothes. "Did you design these clothes yourself?" I nodded. His eyes darkened as he said, "They're beautiful." Felix Fu continued, "If I gave you a promotion and raise, would you and your little boyfriend move out of that tiny apartment?" "No, Mr. Fu." Felix Fu looked at me strangely. "Do you enjoy making people suffer with you?" I replied honestly, "The rent hasn't expired yet, and we signed a 1-year lease. Leaving early would mean losing the deposit." Felix Fu. This was a rule he had never heard of before. Felix Fu. "Then I'll cover the rent and deposit for you. Take my brother and find another place with a bigger bed." Me. "Why do we need a bigger bed?" Felix Fu said, "Matter of factly, I'll be visiting often on behalf of my aunt and uncle to check on their son. Sometimes when I'm tired, I can just stay over instead of driving home late at night when it's unsafe." He wasn't even pretending anymore. Perhaps noticing my odd expression, he changed his tone and said, "You don't actually think I'm here for you, do you? That's ridiculous. After being rejected by you repeatedly, what charm do you think you possess that would make me abandon all dignity and ethics to keep pursuing you? I was just testing your sincerity toward my cousin earlier. Did you really think I'd actually settle down to be a house husband, doing laundry and cooking for you?" I interrupted. "A bigger bed. Will you sleep in the middle then, or should Glenn take the floor?" Felix Fu pondered for a moment and said, "Let him take the floor. I'm the guest, and you're a woman. We should share the bed." After saying this, as if realizing it was inappropriate, he quickly changed the subject. "I'm your boss now, so you should be secretly thrilled. Make me, your big brother, happy, and who knows, I might let you fire me and become the boss yourself." He wouldn't actually think that my promotion, raise, and new place were all thanks to him, would he? Isn't this what I deserve anyway? Even if he hadn't come, I'd have been promoted soon enough. His arrival just sped things up a bit. I replied with a smile, "Sure, I'll discuss it with Glenn when I get back, and we'll definitely save a spot for you, Mr. Fu." Seeing how readily I agreed, Felix Fu's expression froze for a moment. After a pause, he said, Actually, we could rent 2 rooms and just give the guest room to my cousin. But who gets the master bedroom? That's a tough one to guess." Live comments were all roasting him for having even less awareness than Wyatt when it comes to trying to steal someone away. After returning, I told Glenn Gu about the promotion, raise, and moving plans. That very night, he started packing his luggage. If possible, he seemed eager to move out even in the middle of the night. After all, the intentions of the man next door were already crystal clear. By the time I got back from work the next day, Glenn Gu informed me he had found a place. It was slightly larger than the current one, and although it still looked a bit cramped, the conditions were much better in every way. When moving day arrived, Glenn Gu had just taken some things downstairs and turned back to see Wyatt, he carrying his own packed belongings. He almost couldn't maintain his composure. He had deliberately chosen a time when Wyatt wasn't around, hoping to leave quietly to avoid this scheming man finding out where they were going. But unexpectedly, Wyatt still followed, like a piece of sticky candy that couldn't be shaken off. I explained to Glengu, Wyatt is here to help. With him around, you can save some effort and not work so hard. Glengu's gloomy mood instantly brightened, and he glanced at Wyatt. He said, All right, Nancy, don't worry, I'm not tired. It sounded as if I had found a free helper just to make him less weary, but in truth, it was Wyatt who offered to help. Just as I picked up my clothes, Wyatt casually took them from me. Without a word, he just got straight to work. Wyatt didn't take Glengu's provocation seriously at all, though he envied him for holding that position and even being taken care of by me daily. He also looked down on him, moving things so sluggishly, even needing his girlfriend to lend a hand. If it were him, he could carry both the person and the box down in one go. Glengu noticed that this guy seemed to be intentionally competing with him. Even though the weather wasn't hot today, he still went shirtless, carrying the most items and flaunting his muscles in front of me. If he loves moving things so much, then let him do it. Glengu wisely avoided getting caught up in the silent rivalry and instead chose to stick by my side, whispering sweet nothings while Wyatt, he was busy hauling away. It was as if I truly regarded Wyatt, as the mover I had hired. This way, it wasn't a rivalry between love interests anymore, but rather me caring for him by finding him a free servant. The live comments shifted from comparing the two men and discussing their conflict to praising Glengu for his cleverness. It almost seemed like the female supporting character had brought in a third party to take care of the couple. Isn't that true? The male supporting character has been supplying the young couple with fruits all along. He worked tirelessly, yet couldn't even get a taste himself, all while watching the couple being affectionate right beside him. Indeed, those who achieve great things can endure much. The male supporting character quietly finished moving everything without a word. By that logic, the villain has also been providing supplies for the couple, from condoms to custom tables and chairs, and even a 6-foot wide bed, seemingly trying to break them apart. But in reality, joining in, everyone is doing their part to maintain this little home. Mom, give a kiss to the hardworking second dad. I ignored the teasing live comments and handed Wyatt a tissue and some water. Just as the belongings were moved downstairs, a striking luxury car pulled over. The window rolled down, revealing Felix Fu wearing sunglasses. Wow, a Tri-Wizard tournament. Triangles are the most stable shape. Felix got out of the car and glanced at Wyatt, whom I had just given water and tissues. The moving workers following him quickly disembarked and loaded all the packed items into the vehicle within minutes. The efficiency was more than doubled. Felix stood there with an air of nonchalance, making the other two seem like students engaged in trivial squabbles. Indeed, wealth and power are the best filters for a person, even though, in my heart, I find Felix more immature than both of them. It doesn't stop him from appearing incredibly handsome when he's being generous. Get in. I'll take you to your destination. Only a fool would turn down a free ride in this scorching heat. Before getting in the car, I asked Wyatt if he wanted to join us. Live comments erupted in shock, questioning if I was planning to raise a goo in my tiny rented room. This almost sounded like an invitation for a threesome. If it were my mom inviting someone for me. Wyatt, he declined, saying today wasn't the right time as he was drenched in sweat and utterly disheveled. He simply said he'd send me an address after returning. I blinked and asked, "Are you coming over?" Wyatt, he glanced at me, lowered his eyes, and remarked, as if he didn't know, "Do you need me to bring anything else next time?" I replied, "Clothes. I just love clothes and jewelry. The prettier, the better." Wyatt, he smirked and agreed. Nearby, Felix Fu asked Glengu, "Who's that guy?" Glengu said, "Nancy was worried I'd get too tired, so she found me some help. What are you doing here?" Felix Fu dodged the question, saying, "Or maybe you're just not capable enough. Why else would she look for someone else? I've told you before, a woman like Nancy Jiang, you can't handle her. Look at you. What can you do without your parents? You're a little prince raised in an ivory tower. She's just having fun with you for the novelty. It won't last. Someone like her needs a partner who can keep pace, fight alongside her, and share a common language. For example, me." Felix Fu straightened his suit jacket, seeing me approach. He kicked Glenn Gu, taking advantage of his pain to shove him into the passenger seat and lock the door. Then he opened the rear door for me. Casually, he whispered, "Aren't we bringing that one along?" I raised an eyebrow and said, "You want him in the car?" Felix chuckled indifferently. "I'm magnanimous. My greatest virtue is tolerating others." Of course he can tolerate it, because he's not the one in the open. He's the one sneaking around to steal someone's partner. He's just an unsuccessful third or fourth wheel himself. So why would he care about fifth or sixth ones? He just talks a good game. Anyway, he's come to realize that Nancy Jiang is a fickle woman, easily swayed by looks. Saying this might make her think she has the grace of a primary partner and ditch his brother to promote him someday. But if he ever gets promoted, the first thing he'd do is forget his roots. Felix Fu blocked the car door, brazenly flirting with me right in front of Glenn Gu. My gaze drifted downward, meeting the pair of eyes fixed intently on me through the car window. He wasn't looking at Felix Fu, who had trapped him inside, but only at me, as if my romantic entanglements didn't matter, as if the presence of others was irrelevant. What mattered was that I had to know he was watching me, like the shadow that followed me to and from work every day, like the ever-present version of me in a diary, beneath a calm and gentle exterior, a pair of eyes, beastly yet not quite human, always lurking in the shadows. I was somewhat curious. Just as the live comments had pointed out, my breakup with Glenn Gu was a crucial turning point in the plot. He would shed his love, struck mindset, part ways, return home to inherit the family fortune, and years later meet the female lead. Meanwhile, I would spiral downward, all the way to my demise. We were headed in two completely opposite directions. If not for Glenn Gu's persistent love, two people from such vastly different backgrounds would never have shared memories of squeezing into a rented room and enduring hardships together. I wondered, in this very moment and space, what would happen if I broke up with Glenn Gu? Would he truly turn and leave, withdrawing completely, or would he still follow me like a shadow, watching me closely, recording me in that worn-out diary of his? This seemed like a question that didn't need an answer. In reality, Glenn Gu couldn't leave me, so it could only be me who abandoned him. The joy of moving into a new home didn't last long. Glenn Gu discovered that the room next door had been rented out. Glenn Gu noticed a familiar bag of fruit had appeared at the doorstep. Glenn Gu found out that Wyatt he had moved in next door. There was actually someone even more persistent than him. After calculating my savings and reaching the goal I had in mind, I wanted to resign, to pursue something I had planned for many years. Since middle school, I had consciously started saving money for my future, funds to cover potential risks. After all, no one was there to shield me from the risks I might face ahead. I could only build a solid refuge for myself. This money also serves as startup capital. When I submitted my resignation letter on Monday, Felix Fu called me into his office. "Have you saved up enough for your startup?" he asked straightforwardly. Speaking from experience, Felix said, "Do you know how difficult this path will be? Going it alone with no background or resources." I interrupted. "Didn't you inherit your business? Where did you get this no background, no resources startup experience?" An awkward silence fell over the office for 2 seconds. Felix continued shamelessly, "Even if I haven't done it myself, I've seen how it's done. And inheriting the business wasn't exactly smooth sailing for me either. A massive family enterprise has plenty of idiots in it. That's not important," Felix said. "What matters is, I want to know if you'd like to reach your goals more smoothly." I looked at him, and he gazed back at me with a smile. One phrase I've heard since childhood is, "There are no shortcuts on the road to success." But based on my years of work experience, it seems most people are actually taking shortcuts. Family background, opportunities, talent. So I won't refuse any olive branch extended to me. It's all what I deserve. I got straight to the point. Conditions. Felix Fu immediately followed up. Break up with my cousin and date me instead. He offered a highly tempting deal. Money, connections, resources, all laid out before me, with me just needing to follow the blueprint I designed for myself. Unlike my naive, clueless cousin, who's still lost in fairy tales of princes and princesses. I've been immersed in our family business for years. He can only do chores at home that any housekeeper could handle, but I can elevate you, make others look up to you. Felix Fu understood my gaze all too well. From our first meeting, he knew I wasn't someone Glenn Gu could control. The first time I stepped into the Gu family home and saw Glenn's affluent background laid out before me, there was no anxiety in my eyes, no self-doubt, only ambition, an ambition that kept growing stronger, an ambition fueled by an ever-expanding horizon. Everywhere my eyes fell, I wanted to make it all mine. What I want, I must have. Back then, I thought, after enduring so many years of hardship, heaven ought to grant me some luck, to help me soar to great heights, a relationship doomed to end in nothing, and an opportunity one could firmly grasp. Anyone would know how to choose. Felix Fu had no doubt about my final decision. That kind of ambition to want everything was all too familiar to him. That's exactly how he had fought to seize power, not letting the illegitimate children outside get any benefit. So, at that time, he felt his cousin was nowhere near worthy of his wife. Only they were the perfect match. Felix Fu, fearing I might worry this was a scam, thoughtfully drafted a contract. The contract was almost unconditionally in my favor, safeguarding most of my interests, with his only requirement being break up and date him. Looking at this contract, it suddenly occurred to me that I never seem to refuse anything that comes my way. Is it because I have so little to hold on to that I can't say no? But this didn't seem like a drawback. It largely filled what I lacked and secured what I possessed. I smiled and said, I think we could make some adjustments. Mixing business with genuine feelings makes relationships complicated. How about we collaborate instead? That means removing the dating clause and keeping the rest. Establishing a proper professional partnership. Felix Fu frowned with a half smile. That doesn't seem to benefit me much. Did he really think I'd believe his earlier nonsense about signing a contract just to become my boyfriend, pretending to be some lovesick fool willing to sacrifice benefits? But in reality, while this contract protected my interests, it also meant I'd be making money for him by walking the path he paved. He knew my value better than anyone, wanting both romance and career success, extracting everything beneficial from me. There's no such perfect scenario, I said. Don't you want a more genuine relationship? Or do you prefer us to have a relationship tangled with interests, where feelings gradually fade away? I added, Mr. Fu, you must understand, the kind of relationship during student days, free from any interests, where pure emotion controls the mind, is the most genuine. Felix Fu grinned. I don't get it. Never been in one. Still a virgin. Kept myself chaste for you all these 28 years. Me. I closed my eyes briefly and continued. Besides, after I break up with Glenn, and with our business partnership, we'll be seeing and spending more time together than anyone else. Are you worried your charm isn't enough to make me like you? That you're rushing to lock me into a relationship out of insecurity? Felix pondered for a moment. Excellent reverse psychology. He suddenly clutched his chest. I'm hooked. His gaze held a look of absolute confidence, as if certain I'd fall for him eventually. I'll have someone draft another contract. Once signed, you'll need to keep your promise. Break up with Glenn Gu. Probably the typical dramatic atmosphere when the male lead is down on his luck. Suddenly, without warning, it began to rain. I broke up with Glenn Gu during this oppressive rainy season. Looking at his panicked face, it suddenly struck me that while this was the end of our relationship, it marked a new beginning for me. I was so cruel to him, I thought, gazing at his tear-streaked face. This naive sweetheart, who had spent over 20 years in an ivory tower, learned to cook, shop for groceries, and squeeze onto buses for me, enduring hardships without complaint all this time. And I just abandoned him like that. In the illusory storyline, he was the one who left me, but in reality, I discarded him for my own future. I told him to go home, back to his parents, and resume being that carefree rich heir. Truthfully, I don't pity him. He still has a fallback, able to return to his parents' embrace even after being abandoned by me. but I don't. Since my last relative passed away, I've had no retreat. I must move forward, constantly forward, drawing warm people with their endless warmth to rush toward me, providing me with heat. Glenn Gu held me, crying bitterly, and said resentfully, I don't blame you. I know who's seducing you, who's tearing us apart. He knew that love wasn't important in my heart. He never thought he could compare to my future prospects. He was well aware of his place and understood that happiness in a small family where both have nothing is as precarious as walking on thin ice. So he felt insecure, always fearing that this happiness built on nothing would shatter the next moment. He wanted to keep an eye on me constantly, only feeling at ease when I was within his sight. He knew his behavior wasn't normal, that no one likes having their personal space endlessly invaded. So he always carefully hid this side of himself. But he seemed to sense that I was always indulging him, allowing him to cross untouchable boundaries and roam freely in my space. Such indulgence often leads one to mistakenly believe it's because of love. Thus, he sank deeper into this relationship. Even though he lived in an environment devoid of security, he always found the greatest sense of safety when close to me. He couldn't bring himself to hate me, even though it was truly me who decided to abandon him. He only resented those who racked their brains to separate them. I'm about to be beaten to death by Glenn Gu. Felix Fu sat sprawled in my office chair, complaining. I closed the door and remarked casually, Isn't this what you deserve? Didn't you think about this outcome when you made me break up with someone back then? Over the past 5 years, Felix Fu had been living through hell. Glenn Gu tearfully returned to the Gu family to acknowledge his roots, and the next day had his parents summon Felix Fu back, only to start a fight with him out of the blue. In the following years, he kept pulling all sorts of underhanded tricks. Though Glenn Gu had little business acumen, he had plenty of ways to make life miserable for others. Sometimes, when Felix Fu was swamped with work at the company, he'd turn around to find a mess left by Glenn Gu, leaving him utterly overwhelmed. In 5 years, not only did he fail to date me, but he rarely even got the chance to get close, completely different from what he had imagined. Although Glenn Gu had broken up with me, he was still a free man, coming and going as he pleased. He always intruded whenever the two of us were alone together. And after my career got on track and I gradually slipped from his control, the chances became even slimmer. Felix Fu gritted his teeth and cursed. You've already broken up. Why does he still contact you every few days? That flirtatious bitch. And there's another bastard who came out of nowhere, always showing off his body in front of Nancy Jiang. 1, 2, 3, 4. All of them are shameless men without virtue. Felix Fu was either overwhelmed with work or on the verge of going mad with anger every day. The men around me only increased in number, and they kept getting younger. Even Felix Fu, who used to be supremely confident in himself, couldn't help but start feeling inferior. After all, people don't stay young forever, but there will always be young people, no matter how many face masks he applied. He couldn't match the freshness of those men in their prime. I teased him mockingly. Didn't you say before that you were broad-minded and tolerant? Tolerant my ass. Felix Fu cursed inwardly. That was just an advantage he made up to impress people. In truth, he wished he could disregard the law and have all those flirtatious men executed. I packed my things and said directly, I'm heading back. Want to walk together? This year, right after buying a livable villa, Felix Fu immediately purchased the one next door as well. When I got home, there was movement coming from the kitchen. Glenn Gu came out wearing an apron and carrying a bowl of noodles. He beamed brightly. You're back. Perfect timing. My noodles are just done. He set down the bowl and chopsticks, then came over to take my coat. After we broke up, Glenn Gu had returned to his family for less than a day before running back out. He came sheepishly back to the rental apartment, saying he was worried I'd be hungry after work with no food. He insisted he wasn't trying to get back together, just wanted to cook me a meal. From then on, he went from finding excuses to stay to quietly, mutually understandingly, and without any official status remaining. We did break up as Felix Fu had suggested, and Glenn Gu did go back. But since no one tied his legs, he came running back on his own. And this time, there's no hardship. This time, he's back with his revived allowance. It was only a year or two ago that Felix Fu found out Glenn Gu, and I had been apart for less than 24 hours, and he was absolutely furious. He was so focused on breaking us up that he never considered whether Glenn Gu would eagerly run back to me. At the time, he thought I had abandoned Glenn for my future, and someone like Glenn, spoiled since childhood, would surely be angry and resentful, have some pride, and give me the cold shoulder for a year or two. So, the time we were apart was what Felix arrogantly saw as his opportunity. But he never expected Glenn Gu to come running back the very next day. In other words, he showered me with money, resources, and connections, and in the end, all he gained was financial profit. The sweet romance he wanted never materialized. Glenn Gu rested his chin on his hand, watching me eat. Then he suddenly said, "The house behind us was suddenly bought out. Nancy, guess who bought it?" Glenn Gu smiled, but his eyes held a gloomy chill. I could guess who it was with my toes. Probably Wyatt. He's never lost contact with me. All these years, wherever I moved, he followed. I blinked, and the rows of live comments were still there. I pinched myself, and the pain made me realize this was real. I avoided Glenn Gu because I was afraid he'd follow again. So this time, I specifically bought up everything around me in advance, except for the occupied ones and Felix Fu's unit, which I couldn't outbid him for. As a result, Wyatt, he bought the occupied one at a high price. Even my study window directly faces his master bedroom. Glenn Gu still smiled gently. He was no longer the person he was 5 years ago. Now, he clearly understands his advantages compared to those around him. He knows what I want: power, money, and a warm home. Felix Fu wouldn't be willing to give up everything he has to stay in a cage as a kept man. And Wyatt, he is the same kind of person. He might be willing to give it up, but it's definitely not from the heart willingly. Only he is different. He willingly steps into the cage I've prepared, willingly waits for me to lock it, and willingly becomes a kept man waiting for me to come home. He knows I won't refuse people, things, or opportunities that come to me willingly, but no one could surpass him. No one.